Welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy. This is As the Wheel Turns, So's the Days Are Our Ride series, live from the garage of Loveland, Colorado. So if you haven't seen me before, well, welcome. I'm a guy that basically made a business out of his garage, been in the cycle industry over 30 years, and what I'm trying to do is provide insights, well, this particular issue, provide insights of the industry and what I see them as news articles come across my laptop, as well as what is affecting our actual cycling community and bike shops. And coming from an independent bike dealer back in the 90s when my parents had Parker bikes, we worked a lot, right? It was one of those things, pre-internet, all that kind of thing, eBay and everything else. Online sales were non-existent, and fast forward to today, going through all those changes within the industry and reflecting what is happening today compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's completely a different dynamic, but we still have a lot of the same type of challenges, and those are becoming at light again after the whole insurgence of the boom of COVID. Well, when you're talking about the boom of COVID, everybody was affected, right? It was a global thing. And it doesn't matter if you're in the States or overseas or whatever, then you have supply chain issues and everybody's looking for toilet paper. Well, back to now, we have plenty of toilet paper and plenty of bike parts, and all of a sudden somebody didn't see in the tea leaves and didn't realize that we're going to have a big decline after the big insurgent. Well, I've seen this over the years in micro level, and the title of "Are we doomed?" is like, well, all depends on your perspective, right? I mean, where you're sitting in the industry. Are you at the CEO of a big company that's doing okay, or another one that's a sub-brand like Kona, Surly, Santa Cruz, you name it, that's not a headliner in a lot of shops where they might be struggling, and obviously the cracks are definitely showing of having too much inventory, and they're trying to do everything to survive in that perspective. Well, the doom and gloom, it's going to hit some of the manufacturing, and it's going to hit a lot of the independent bike shops. That's where my heartstrings lies, is the independent bike shops, that kind of thing, where I have a mom and pop shop. That's where I grew up, and that's one of those deals where we worked really hard, we struggled over the years, and it eventually failed. And a lot of shops have done this over the years. Well, for me, I learned from their failings, right? It's one of those situations where, whoa, you don't want to do that, and this and that, and any kind of insight I can provide to anybody that's out there owning a shop or thinking about having a shop, whatever the case may be. And it doesn't have to be bicycle retail. It could be completely something else in any kind of retail itself, outdoor retail. So when you're looking at those particular situations, it is just kind of crazy where we had this huge boom, which we've had booms within economy and so forth of outdoor activities, and there's always kind of a lull. And this dates back to, modern retail. So even back in, I think, at the turn of the century, New York had a big boom because they opened up a bike path, and everybody decided to go along the bike path among the Hudson or whatever it was. And they had a huge boom in cycling back then. Granted, it was micro scale compared to today's standards, but we've had those sufferings, and here we are, like at least 9 months into the big suffering, and Specialized is one of the companies that kind of led the oh, I gotta put some stuff on sale in last fall, and then follow suit, and eventually Trek is on like their 8th Trek Fest of the season, right? It's just they keep on extending it. And I've seen this before. Being a Trek dealer in the 90s, they've had, there was a couple of struggling years there where, man, I'm talking like, yeah, we have a sale. Didn't do so great. Let's do another sale. Let's add more stuff to it. Didn't do so great. They keep on going and going and going because the industry, and it still is to today, they've done some changes, but what I'm talking about, the model years shift. So the model years shift in usually July. We're in July and going into August, and that's where you're looking at, the bike brands are switching over to the next model year. And they've got a little smart about this because it's usually the higher end stuff, like, you know, the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 things. Like they have to bring something new colors or whatever the case may be, or maybe a new feature. Those particular bikes, and or they're releasing that bike that there's then shown off in the Tour de France, which is the Super Bowl of cycling for road anyway, where, you know, it's like, hey, we need this fancy little cool thing, we're going to release it next month, it's going to hit your stores. Try to get that end of the season excitement, which unfortunately end of the season better not be end of the season in August because we've been struggling so hard, and that's just becoming a super crazy thing. So, you know, is it doomed? There's going to be some shops that they're already struggling. The creativity of everybody is coming out on all of us. We're all just kind of like, okay, what do we need to do to shift to make it a little more adaptable, sustainable, what have you? Well, at the end of the day, it comes to what is the customer really looking for? They're looking for price point products that, you know, when they need them, they're not paying an absorbent amount of pricing. The sell prices need to be actually sell prices, not the actual retail of 2019. It needs to show, like, you know, bring the prices down on that. And that's where at the manufacturing level has to really, they dictate the pricing pretty much. But as a storefront, you're shooting for labor and so forth. A lot of bike shops, the golden nugget you can get out of a lot of this, and taking a chunk of my playbook currently, is focus on some used stuff. It's a lower lift expense. You can do a trade-in event, which I've seen several bike shops locally have done. And what they do is they take those trade-ins, they fix them up, they sell them, they put the brands that they carry, that they traded in, like if you're Specialized, you carry Specialized, you put Specialized used on your floor, that just strengthens the brand itself, in addition to helping an extra pipeline of cash flow, plus you're reaching a customer base that's a little bit, you know, lower in, I would say, you know, entry level, where the bike brands can't manufacture entry levels anymore. They just, the dollars and cents doesn't add up to them. So the road bikes was specific. You got yourself a $1,500 road bike. That's the bottom of the bottom. What if you had a used model that was under $1,000, which was some carbon or better quality, better componentry and so forth? That can help the bike shop kind of get like the retail perspective shot in the arm to boost you and kind of carry that through the winter. And that used product, you're not a dealer agreement tied, so you can sell those online. You can even sell them on eBay. I mean, it's not like you have to deal with any of these individuals to, you know, one of those things where you have to, when you have a contract with Trucker Specialized, you can't take their product and throw it up online. It's just, you know, it's a no-no. You know, they'll bust you for it. But if you had used products, you can do that as long as you know how to box up a bike and ship it, that kind of thing. So anyway, you know, shout out there to Tim. Thanks for putting a comment. Thanks for joining me on Sunday morning. Yeah, I'm a little rough because we had some friends over last night. But anyway, that's why I'm wearing glasses. But back to my original point, you're currently looking at a lot of struggle for a lot of bike shops, independent bike shops. And they're going to have to shut down the boutiquiness of it, and they're going to have to be direct to the customers, in the sense that, you know, what are they looking for? Where's their customers coming from? Can we sustain this? All those things, right? It's just one of those deals that you gotta be very quick on the fly and adaptable. Smaller bike shops can do that. I can do that because I'm very small. So I'm like, okay, open up service again. Let's do this. Let's do some fittings. Let's do whatever we can do to kind of just generate excitement for that. Well, how do we get here, right? I mean, we knew, you know, we're talking about doom, and is the cycling industry doomed? Well, how did we get here? Well, we knew we had a spike because it just caught us all on fire in 2020. In 2021, we were like, okay, we're adapting to it. And in 2022, we were like, some companies saw like, oh boy, this is gonna go down fast and hard. And because, you know, the manufacturers knew how much product was coming in, then they went to dollars and cents and numbers, and they're like, oh crap. That's where you saw Specialized, like, okay, we need to dump these certain models. And that started the whole cascade effect. And it wasn't them per se, that they just saw it first. And then you have Pros Closet having its third or fourth round of layoffs, and you have, every major company is having like a decline in sales. So they knew it was happening, you know. Yeah, so it's one of those things where, okay, that hit us pretty hard. Well, guess what hit us even harder? The weather. And I've been in retail for over 30 years plus. And weather in our little micro environment here in Colorado, if the weather gets weird, like I said, say like March and April, you have a snow, because we have our most snow totals in March and April. And if it hits on the weekend, our sales are nothing. So in Colorado, it's one of those things like you'll have a couple sunny days and you have a couple snowy days and whatever the case may be. And that in general was always a risk. And if you had the nice days on the weekend, people would go out and ride their bikes, you know, that kind of thing. Well, for us and a lot of the country, we had a colder than average. And I have a really good insight on this. Why? My wife's the atmospheric scientist. She is a assistant state climatologist here in Colorado. Her focus is on drought and also predictions. And she wrote a paper on El Nino and El Nino and how it affects, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we had a conversation last night, and this is actually very timely because they officially announced that we're El Nino, I think, which is the warmer of temperatures of the ocean. Okay, what does this mean, right? To outdoor retail. It means your weather is wacky. I mean, that's where it comes to. You can't predict it. And we've had colder than averages, which is caused by this, partially by the El Nino, all the way up through June. So when you have colder than averages, which basically what's that translate to? I did the MS-150 the last weekend of June. I'm doing mechanical support, and all my riders that are coming up getting stuff worked on, they're huffing because they had no time to train outdoors because it was just a big mess. Okay, that's just one perspective of it. That has been snuffing the whole cycling and outdoor industry for the last 2-3 months. I was hoping to recover in like April and May. I have not recovered yet. I mean, from the off season. So, you know, when you're looking at seasonality, you're like, oh man, okay, I'm going down and down, and you're in the red, and you're in the red, and you're like, okay, hopefully, you know, a few months in the summer, you pop right back up into the positive numbers to offset that, right? It's called seasonal business. We've been cut off at the knees every month until like 2 weeks ago. My sales will finally kind of come back up. Not as strong as I hope. Well, you know, I'll take anything at this point, right? So, and as well as any other bike shop out there, like we will give you a warm hug. We will ask what you need. We'll try to take care of you, all those kinds of things and hoping. And with the weather being so weird, this is the doom and gloom part. Could go. I would say it's almost 50-50. But I'm not a scientist, so I'll have to ask my wife a little bit more about that. But going into the fall, right now we're having warmer than average temperatures, some extreme colder than average temperatures, and you know, and you see it in the news. So we're like, okay, people are out riding, and now they're getting into the seasonal outdoor activities and so forth. People finally going camping, all those things. Hopefully that extends, right? We need that to extend for any businesses to have recovered this 9 months of deficit because none of us are really designed or modeled to support that. So what you're looking at is we better not have any snowstorms in September. If we do, I mean, that's just going to be a huge gut punch. Or colder than average temperatures hitting in October, which basically snuffs out our outdoor activities and riding and so forth. So hopefully we can carry this warming trend, which, you know, predictions are always kind of, they're predictions. You can't rely on them, but it's basically you're hoping for the best. But all you bike shop peoples out there, prepare for the worst. I mean, it's one of those things, just yeah, be prepared, but don't overbuy. And you've already learned that because we can't overbuy right now because we're all strung out on our credit lines, just trying to maintain. And right now we're just trying to pay off those bills. And you know, I'm micro level, when you go bigger and bigger and bigger, you just keep adding a zero and zero and zero. So some of those shops are not going to sustain. And some of the shops that knew of this downfall because have been around for a while, or just big, business savvy people. If you're a track dealer, you're a specialized dealer, or a bigger dealer that has multiple locations, you sold the Trek or Specialized or Pond. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, we're done. I'm tired of the struggle. So I've seen several of those, and I knew those cats. I mean, I've worked with them over the years through my software, through Retail Toolkit. So I knew exactly their perspective. They're like, okay, someone's willing to pay for it, go for it. And Trek is still buying, and Specialized is still buying, and so forth. So when you're looking at all these different things, our landscape is definitely changing again, and it has been changing for the last 15 years, but now it's like, bam, slap of the face, it is going to change hard. So when you're looking at your local shops, you roll in here locally, and I've covered this too, is, oh, it's no longer a Trek store, it's now a Specialized store. There's these big player moves, or you may roll to that bike shop and they're gone. And it's one of those things, as the average customer, we're not really reading the tea leaves in the news and watching our local shops, because you probably only go into them like once or twice a year to pick up tubes and tires and maybe a new bike. But if you're not really paying attention to the cycling clubs and all that kinds of things, you're kind of like, I don't know, you may not even know. Which is really kind of funny, because I walked into the Specialized store, and it was like the first weekend they opened up in a week and a half when Trek moved out, which was crazy how fast they did it. That's a whole nother story in itself. But they had a staff, they didn't have everything in there yet, but they had a representation of Specialized products and what have you. So, but the funny thing was, while I was standing there for like the 20, 30 minutes, I was jibber-jabbering. I just jibber-jabber those guys all day long, and I talked their ears off, probably bothered the hell out of them. But anyway, it was like 3 or 4 different customers just kind of like rolled right in. They're like, huh. It's like, oh, they weren't expecting it to be a Specialized store, or InCycle is the branding that they're using, and is kind of like, oh. And if you had a Trek specific issue, it's like, hey, you have to go down the street, because that's where they moved to. So your neck of the woods has probably experienced some of those changes. And anybody out there that's opening a bike shop right now, oh, more power to you. I hope you really have a niche that is really need to be filled in the market and tested and trued, or if you're a shop that is adapting, downsizing, which has been the last 20 years, a lot of shops have shrunk their retail floors down, but either maybe some bigger moves like, oh, maybe we just need to move our shop into an industrial area, or something other than paying high rent, because I can tell you retail right now, they're not going down. You think they would have gone down in price because there is a shortage, but they're in for the long haul. These retail management companies and owners, I mean, it's a numbers game for them. So they're not bringing the price down, and it's not providing opportunities for a lot of these businesses to try to sustain. I mean, there's nobody in their right mind could look at the numbers and the economy and what the market's been doing the last 9 months and go, hey, it's a great idea to open up a bike shop in this overpriced location. It's just not going to happen. So it's either the big companies like Pond, Specialized, or Trek are going to fill in those spots, or your smaller individuals are going to move back into the garage, which is not a bad place, quite honestly. You can really adapt it to a point where it's appointment based. You can work around it. I mean, yeah, you're not going to scale to the level as in a bike shop and have employees and so forth, but if you have to scale back to an individual, of a small shop to owner, or if you're a head manager and you're like, I still want to do bike stuff, but I don't want to work at a bike shop anymore, or the bike shop is closing. You got opportunities, and if you don't want to pay to buy a VeloFX van and go do your thing in a van, which I don't, the location repair service part, it just sounds like a lot of stress to me. And I've met and known people that have done that over the years, and they don't last long. What's more sustainable is having the customers come to you, which I thought would be really weird that people would like, oh, to come to somebody, random guy's garage and drop off their bike to be worked on or buy a bike. But it's turned out to be not a big deal at all, because Well, 2020 has done a lot of things for a lot of different perspectives. One, we order a lot of stuff now online and have it delivered, like Amazon and your groceries, right? And your food. And also, you had to seek out the used market to go find that outdoor equipment. So they got used to going to somebody's house and whatever. As long as you have a great reputation and reviews and you have a website and all that stuff, it's sustainable. I mean, I'm a full business without the retail location. So that takes a huge chunk of the overhead out of the equation. And I'm not, I'm stressed, of course, of business being slow, but I'm not as stressed if I was paying a mortgage, or not a mortgage, but a rent that's like 15 grand and I'm coming up shorter than that every month. So and you have to look at projections, and I'm the numbers guy. So if you look at projections all that, it's like, oh, how long am I going to recover? Well, for me to recover, I only have to have a couple good months and I'm doing okay, which I'm still doing okay now. But if you're a bigger company where you have a retail location, that could be 6 months to a year to 2 years to recover time. Then you have to take out loans at a higher interest rate because the interest rates are higher now, and so forth. So it's not pretty. And when you look at it, it's like, I would love to be warm and fuzzy about it. And there's optimistic, but the warm and fuzzy thing I can really bring to the table is like, okay, a lot of people or a lot of shops are not going to shake out well. They're going to probably go under, and the bigger companies are going to move in. But the ones that do sustain and are adaptable and been around long enough to kind of work the system to get through this hump, they know on the other side it's going to be fruitful. And why are they doing this? They're not, nobody in the cycle industry except for the corporations, if you're an independent bike dealer, you're not here for the money. it's just, you're here for the passion, and you love bikes, and you love the community, and you love the parts, or the things that go all circumference cycling and the events. And those individuals, it's a lot of it's just the passion piece, and and they got into it because I thought it'd be fun to have a bike shop, and realizing like, okay, well, they have to usually have other sources of income, a significant other or what have you, to sustain that. But over the years, I mean, that's what's going to be left is your independent bike dealers, that is, the warm and fuzzies, and very, happy to see you, they're going to treat their customers good and try to provide good product mixes and some cool perspectives and niches. So when I talk about niches, you're like, okay, you're a YouTuber niche brand guy. It's like, well, no, when you're looking niches in retail, okay, or bicycle retail specifically, you have the truck store and the specialized store. You walk in, and it looks like a showroom, like a car dealership. Everything's new and fancy and pretty and a lot of money to buy. So if you have that, that's great. If not, you're like, I don't know if I can really afford this. Then you're forced into the niche brand bike shops. So the niche ones are like, they'll have they probably won't carry the truck specialized. They'll have a couple other brands, but they may have some used or good refurbished used, or they're specifically to like a tri shop. They just do triathlons, that's been a thing for years too. But now it's even broken up to more niches like adventure riding. So they'll have gravel or just the e-bike. I went into a Pedal Go in Fort Collins, which I didn't realize they had one. I've been there for a few years, and I rolled in there, and that's all they sell is that one brand of e-bikes, and it's this nice little shop and so forth. So that's what I'm talking about is niche. So if you find yourself like, okay, I'm looking for a family-oriented bike shop that just sells kids bikes and some used bikes and so forth, there's going to be probably a niche shop like that. Because honestly, I walked into the Trek store here, they had 4 kids bikes. That's it, and they were $300, $400, $500. So I'm a parent, and you're a parent, you don't have that lucrative income usually to pay for a bike $400 or $500, and they're going to be out of it in 6 months to a year. So you're going to be looking for that used bike shop niche where, like here we have Recycle Cycles, have been around for years, and they've done really well in the market. And there's also Days Gone By or Roll By or whatever. There's another shop that does a lot of used. They don't carry main brands, but they have like the J&B and the quality bike supply vendors to supply them with parts and so forth, but it's mostly just used stuff. And okay, so you walk into a bike shop, it does a lot of primary used, and and you're kind of sticker shock still. You're like, oh, $800 for this bike? I saw this bike on, on Facebook Marketplace for 200 or 300. Okay, well, if it's a representable shop and they do a really good job, they're going to be able to explain that, yeah, we still paid that price. And what you're seeing the markup would be is a service man. You take this used bike and take it to a service manager at a bike shop, and you got the labor and the parts and all that. And then on top of that, I mean, that's what I do. That's what the value prop is. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to have like a really, for me, you're supposed to have a really nice, solid bike that fits you and you're ready to roll. So you have the best experience possible out of the gate, so you don't have that heartburn of going to the bike shop. Well, that's what they're trying to provide. Well, they got to tack on a little bit more because they have rent. And on top of that, they have employees. So when you look at that price, you're actually buying the bike, investing into that shop. So it's one of those things where you think about, if you really think about it, it's like, okay, I really like the shop. They took care of me on little things here and there. I'm going to buy a bike from them. Okay, the bike says $700. Yeah, I know I can go pick one up for 300, but I'm still going to have to work on it. So they're going to help you. And plus they probably have some warranties and guarantees and that kind of thing. What I do as an extra value prop is a fit. So that's some of those shops need to bring that static fit back into the fold because nobody's doing it anymore, included with a bike sale. And that's what blows my mind. And that's where you get your kind of, those little things you can get the foot up on the Trek and the Specialized stores and the pawn stores. Like the fitting is one easy one. You get a trainer, throw the bike on there, get a plumb line and a couple other like little measuring things. It probably doesn't cost you less than $100 to do, but that gives the satisfaction for the customer that the bike is, number one, the right size for them, and number two, it is actually adjusted to them. And that gives you the opportunity to have that conversation like, oh, do you need bottle cages and stuff like that, so you can upsell those accessories if they need it. That's where I'm saying the entry-level customer is the gold mine because they need all this stuff, right? And they need to be educated of what they need and what they don't need, because they go online and they'll see like videos like me, like, oh, well, you need all this stuff. And really, do they? On some of it, they may not need like all of it in a particular area. So if you can give them the expertise of getting into it, like a package or a lower end and that kind of thing, you can give that experience for that individual that's just getting into riding or taking care of the family, bike paths or whatever, or that niche, and get them the best experience possible. And that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day, right? That's what it comes down to. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those crazy things that, I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time, and the reason why I put up the Doom one is I saw another YouTube company do the same thing, and they had 3 talking heads related into the industry. One was in a wholesaler position, and another one was in a high-end bike position, and it's just like, I watched it a little bit. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it kind of sparked my mind because I really don't need to watch the whole thing because I know what's going on. And then also this was a European perspective, so yeah, that's what we were looking at there. But I don't know. I think we're gonna have a little bit, or it depends on the snow. That's what it really comes to. If the weather finally broke, it's nicer if people are out there riding. I see people riding on the bike paths near my house a lot more, and I just hope for everybody it's a long summer, and that way we can get a lot more riding and more fun activities. And if people are into riding or just getting into it and they feel like, okay, we can, I feel good about my job, I want to buy a nicer bike, that kind of thing, it's going to be there, and the prices are going to be better in the used as well as the new, or vice versa. And in that situation where it's really a good opportunity to get into cycling because pretty much everything is on sale. I mean, we have too much inventory. So if it's, if you're even buying a used bike, the prices have come down. And then all the accessories that you need to get, like just the common sense ones like a helmet, gloves, cycling shorts, a pack for the bike with some tools and a tube and a patch kit, just your general necessities. And you can look on my website. I have a laundry list of things there, affiliate links to show you what you need. But you can go out and find, those kinds of things what you want to put on your bike to make it sustainable and a great ride. Bottle cages is another one. Those are not very expensive water bottles, so you can drink water while you're riding. Then you can really go crazy and get nutrition and computers and all the there's like the needs and then there's the wants. And the needs, well, you got to cover those first so your experience is good out of the gate when you go out for that hour or two ride. And the wants are the stuff like, I want to keep track of my wattage, or I want the mirrors and the lights and those kinds of things. So that's I'm kind of just rambling on at this point, but all those things when it comes to a full loop round will prevent the doom. Let's just put it that way. If we get people out there and riding and doing those events, and the summer lengthens into November, a lot of the regional areas here, we're going to have a lot more activity, a lot more service, a lot more help, basically, because 2 months, 3 months of really nice weather is not going to help the mom and pop shops. It might give them enough boost to get through the winter, but that's another whole can of worms. So they're going to be more diverse. So going back to, if you're the independent bike dealer's perspective and you're watching this, yeah, you're busy as hell right now, but you got to be thinking 6 months, 6 to 9 months from now. I mean, that's what you did your day's worth of work. Now you need to spend 30 minutes with your team and go, okay, what do we need to do in January? Or what do we need to do to work towards in February to get through those colder months or the slower periods? Do we start doing off-season things like skis and snowboards and that kind of thing, which we did at Park Our Bikes just to sustain, and that worked well. Or whatever the case may be. But from the 90s to now, there's huge, great opportunities in online sales. So if you provide good, solid, like a plethora of good used bikes or used parts, try to get that machine running now and start doing that buying. Even if you're going to do off-season used stuff, like grab some snowshoes now and snowboards or whatever for the off-season stuff, and start stockpiling that, so when it becomes November and December, you have something to sell and to generate that excitement. And again, when I talked about used, you can sell it anywhere. You're not branded by the Trek contract or Specialized contract. You can throw that all online and try to just, quite honestly, a few extra bike sales or snowboard sales or snowshoe sales in any week in the winter in your off season is huge. That's less you're going negative. It's like you're kind of curving that pain point. So hopefully next year, I'm not sure how the La Nina is going to affect within 9 months, but if it pops around and we have a nice warmer than average spring and people all go out and have their activities, that's going to be like, okay, I survived. We have a less of a deficit, and then we could actually get positive and be healthier and be prepared for, take those learnings. This is a big learning for a lot of companies. They haven't, bike shops or outdoor shops have not experienced this. If they opened up in the last 5 years, they've not experienced this. So it's going to be huge learning for them, and that's if they sustain. And if they do, that gives an opportunity like, oh, okay, we like doing this, we want to keep doing this, and we don't want to sell out, so we're gonna provide a more variety of perspectives. Don't go too crazy because the perspective is too thin, but start working on those little pieces and adding for the off season. And if you're a cyclist or a mountain climber or any of those, the opportunities for you is the sell prices on newer stuff if you're really going to get into it, that kind of thing. And if you've been an avid cyclist and you have your shop and you like them, you go in and get some extra tubes. Go in and get an extra jersey or something. Just help them out a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you get enough of your community to pitching in and buying stuff, I'm not asking for anything for handouts for free. It's just buy some of my stuff, and then it's like maybe that will help them to sustain and get through or get some service done as well. Which is a great time. There's a lot, some of the shops are pretty caught up because they're not super busy, and if they are, great for them. But make those appointments and that kind of thing. Support your local, because If you don't do it, they're just gonna, next time you need somebody, you show up, they're gonna be gone. Then you're gonna be going to the REI or the Trek store or whatever to get your stuff. And I mean, they have good people there and good, they still have training service and all that, but it's just, there is a difference. And if you know that difference and you embrace that difference, you like that difference, you hold on to it. There's some of those niche little shop around the corner kind of thing, plug an old movie. It's the same kind of concept. The big bad chain stores, they're popping up and they're aggressively attacking now with price. And like Trek did, which blew me away, they did the 24-hour service. Are they really doing it? On some stuff, sure. They even have, it's not just like, oh, we'll just release this and be a thing. And see what happens. They actually they doubled down. I walked in, the service department has a big old like $3,000 sign that was made for that location. It had to be. I mean, I've been in the marketing stuff, and it's like had to be like $3,000 to make this sign that says 24-hour turnaround on tune-ups. Right there, big bold behind them, and you see the service writer with big eyes, like, yeah, we're trying that. So it's man, they've committed, and I'm not sure if it's a nationwide thing, but if it's just a test market here, but man, they have doubled down on that. And on top of what Trek has done with service is they have 6 locations across the nation where it's shock service centers. So they technically open it to your independent bike dealers, like, oh, you can take the fork off of this bike and send it to our service center from Trek, and they charge you for that. So they've really saw an opportunity, and there's a shop in Longmont, Colorado called Dirt Labs, and they used to be a bike shop years ago, and they've just did suspension work, and then they went to strictly just doing suspension work, dropper posts, rear suspension and front suspension. And they've been doing it for over a decade. That's all they do. And it's a little shop, and it's kind of cool. You walk in and it's like you're looking at like this, and just like several bays of just people just working and fine-tuning those forks and so forth. And that's really kind of cool. It's kind of like walking into a lab, right? Which is their name. And Trek has either saw that or they saw it somewhere and decided to do their own version of that. Obviously, these centers you can't just roll into and have your shocks done. They're actually sent by. They have enough stores now that they need to feed them into those locations or offsite locations to have those services done. So what happens is you're getting your shock repaired, right? Okay, I need to go get my front suspension done or my dropper post done or whatever. They take your bike. And they're not saying it's 24 hours. That's something completely different. This goes it's like a 7 to 10 day turnaround. It's like, I mean, you got to get a tech to take it apart and bag up your parts and wrap it somewhere and store it, which is kind of a heavy lift. Send out the fork to that location to be serviced. They have a log, right? So whatever comes in, first out. And when that process gets done, it gets shipped back to the shop. And when they can get that tech free enough to throw that fork back on, as well as any other repair work, because you can't really finish the tune-up that's maybe included with that service ticket. So they have to wait till that shock gets back, then they have to put it into the cycle for that day's repairs. So it's a little bit longer time. Well, Trek decided like, oh, we'll give 2 days of rental of whatever, free included with that shock, which is kind of a cool, so you're not totally out, and it gives them an opportunity like, hey, try out this new thing, tease you to buy something new. Yeah, I mean, they're finally getting very creative. Well, unfortunately, that creativity from the big box stores, Trek, is cutting into the niche market. So I mean, I'm a person that likes to know the person that's working on my stuff. I mean, it's one of those things, and a lot of people are like that. So going to Dirt Labs, you can actually talk to the tech that's actually going to be working on your fork. That's one perspective of it. So those niche stores kind of have to figure out, okay, this is what Trek's doing. What makes us stand out? and why do customers want to come to us instead of going to a truck store? Is it better quality, better service, fast turnaround, which is probably going to be the key point, free shipping back and forth, videos of how to take your fork off and put it back on. It's really not that hard. It's just some things you need to be mindful of when you do those things, like don't lose those bolts, you know, that kind of thing, because you're gonna have a hard time finding it. Or you send the fork in yourself. Then if you're a guy that likes the local shop and they don't do suspension work, they send it out too. Okay, I got my fork sent out, came back, bring that bike parts and the fork, go, put it back together, please. And they'd be more than happy to do that for you, and the tune up or whatever else you need to be done on that. So there's a lot of different niche perspectives that bike shops can do. And there's a lot of things as customers we can do as ourselves to help those shops out as well. So is it totally doomed? Yeah, it's gonna be for some people, for sure. Is it gonna be, you know, roses in a year? I think this is like, they've had predictions of like, this is going to take like 3 to 4 years to dig out of. And you're talking, that's corporate, Trek, Specialized, and whatever. You know, Trek's probably doing pretty good because now they have a whole bunch of bike shops. And yeah, business might be slow, but they're not dealing with the 30 point, 35 point margin that the independent bike dealer is dealing with. They have, you know, that jersey costs them $5 and they're selling it for 120. So their margins are way deeper. The bikes, kind of similar. They have another 20 points added to the bikes of profit. So it doesn't take them very much to sell a few more bikes to have that shop be in the black, kind of thing. And working in a big box store myself, I worked for Big Five Sporting Goods for about 9 years, and I was a GM there. And what got me out of cycling at the time and put me into the big box outdoor retail is there was a glass ceiling of bike shops at the time. There was no corporate. There was no, you got to store manager or service manager and you're done. I mean, there's nowhere to go unless you jumped into like manufacturing, been a rep or something of that nature, which I know a lot of people have done. I know them personally. And, you know, that's great for them. But for me, I jumped into that, and it's like I was being trained to be a regional supervisor and all that kinds of things. So when I left, I was, you know, that's where you have, you know, that extension. Well, now I'm going into a different kind of perspective. It's like, okay, you got your employees that work in bike shops. Now you have an opportunity for those employees to stay within the industry, within the retail spectrum of it. And therefore, you know, the positive part of the Trek, Specialized, and the Pond and REI is providing those people so they can actually get a job in the cycling industry and keep going and still provide a little bit of income and advancements and raises and jump companies from one to another and have those career hops, which is a great opportunity, which I didn't have back in the early 2000s, which now are available for those. So when you're talking that, okay, you got your mom and pop shops, that kind of thing, which my heartstrings are for, but for the individuals that are working in these Trek and Specialized stores, they've actually have a good opportunity. So you have less inclined of burnout, and they have, you know, they're working hard to support the brand and so forth. So there's a couple perspectives, and there's the positive and negatives. It's just, it's changed, and it's going to continuously change. And what was really interesting, I saw, it was a podcast on YouTube. I should remember this guy's handle. But he does, you know, adventure riding, has a whole bunch of subscribers, and it's kind of one of the guys I was looking into, like, what's this guy doing? Well, his thing, I think he's a software guy that just did kind of gravel adventure type touring, or like, you know, back to touring bikes, but more, you know, gravel type thing. Well, what I'm trying to get at is he had a guy on in New York or the Bronx, and this guy, he had his own shop and employees and all this, but he downsized. And this was before COVID. He was downsized, like, you can't sustain this. It's just too much stress, not making enough money and whatever. So he niched up. Basically, he got a small location, probably smaller than my garage right now, and in the Bronx area. And all he does is like these little adventure tours, and also does custom builds for adventure bikes, like the Salsas and the, the kind of like gravel bikes they put packs on, and you do like cycling, camping adventures and that kind of thing, which sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to do something like that, and maybe I will when, I'm a little bit older and, kids are out of the house, have more time, to be able to just go lose myself in the woods, that kind of thing. But it sounds like a lot of fun, just like throw stuff on there and just go ride. And, Colorado here, we have the Colorado Trail where you can go all the way, I think it goes all from like Denver, South Denver, to all the way down to Durango. I mean, it's like this, you can do this huge adventure, multiple day ride thing, and it's self-sustained, supported type stuff. So, and that's his niche. So it's kind of like, as this guy was talking, it was kind of funny. It was like, yeah, we're kind of like the micro REI of bike shop thing, because I have like Swiss Army knives and canteens and card games for keeping yourself entertained while you're doing these adventure rides, this kind of thing. So it was like, huh. And he's sustained. I mean, he's able to, build enough custom touring type gravel bikes, as a custom, very niche customer base. And he does like these tours that he does like 2 or 3 of them, that kind of thing a year. So that's, for me, that was kind of exciting to see as somebody who's micro small in the Bronx of all places doing this. And you're like, oh, okay, well, if you're passionate about cycling and you're find those kind of little niches and you get into road riding, that kind of thing, that's kind of cool. And I mean, I don't think he does service. He might now, because things might be a little bit slower for him. But, for me, it's like, okay, well, I was too busy to do service, and now everything's kind of stabilized, which I'm able to do service again, which I have time to do, which I like doing. Don't get me wrong, it's not something, it was just like got kind of stressed, and now I figured out a way of kind of, it takes a while to figure out that happy balance in any kind of business. And I've kind of, even with all this experience, I still have to like, okay, kind of have to really think this through, to provide those services without killing me and miss opportunities and so forth and that kind of thing. So it's one of those deals where, in my scenario, where the prices actually finally came down on used markets, and it's a little bit easier to like contact somebody and go, hey, I want to buy your bike. I like the price. I just want to make sure I double check it when I pick it up, but do you mind holding it for me? I'll Venmo half of it for you. And they're more susceptible to doing that, because it's just been sitting there. Nobody's been buying anything. And then I can pick up that bike at more of a leisure time, versus when it was COVID and a little bit after. It was like, if I was not there within 15 minutes, the bike was gone. And now that opens up the whole window for me to open up scheduling, really. Basically, it's like, okay, somebody could drop off a bike. I'll get it done in a day or two. And not because I have a whole bunch of other tune-ups. I just have to have that flexibility. Like, oh, okay, on Tuesday I need to go down to Denver and pick up these 3 bikes, because I lined up a line to pick them up. So I either do your repair on Monday or Wednesday, that kind of thing. So, when you work at, it's a whole scheduling thing and balance of time. And when you're in a struggle like this, you really kind of have to figure out, how that's going to work in your day-to-day operations. And without, I still have hair. I want to keep it, because at some point it might all fall out. If it's not from this, it's going to be from my 7-year-old daughter when she gets older. So that's where I'm at in my little world of, nutsness and quirky, I don't know, retail life of being a bike shop out of the garage. But yeah, so doom and gloom. All depends how you're looking at. They're always going to have a positive face when you talk to them, but when you really know them personally, those bike shop owners are like, "Whew, this is tough," and they're going to be looking for opportunities and so forth to try to sustain and take care of the customers. So if you're more of an avid cyclist, and you'll probably find a little bit more of a warmer hug in that shop now than you may have not before, because they were so busy, and they just kind of, that warm hug kind of goes away when you're just pulling your hair out trying to keep everything going. And now there the other flip perspective is like customer service is really going to have to shine for all of us to sustain, or any of us to sustain. So going into that, there's a couple things that I want to bring note of. Let me take a sip of coffee so I can keep awake here. So, every company has like, oh, please leave a Google review, or whatever. And I have that too, but I'm not really like, take this 20-minute survey after you buy my $5 product. But you get those, you're like, what? But I've had a few unsolicited, basically positive feedbacks. And what I want to, and not to boast me, it just really helps those, and do it to those people that give you excellent service. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to leave this on a very high note. And this is what's really, it blew my mind, because I had one that came in like last summer. I don't know if there was a date on it. And I sold this bike online, and I shipped it to, I think it was Salt Lake. And it was very minimal communications. A lot of them, and some of my bike sales were like no community. They just buy it, and I just ship it out. And I leave little notes like, thank you for purchasing. Here's a video of how to put it back together, and that kind of thing, right? Your things that you need to do. Then sometimes if I'm lucky to have time, I'll send out emails like, oh, here's all the laundry list of things you're gonna do, and hey, I want to leave a review. It's usually on the bottom hidden. Most people just don't see it, which is fine. I'm not here to try to boast my ego by any means. But when you get a card that's handwritten and beautiful penmanship saying how great experience that they had of buying the bike from me, getting it, watching a video, putting it back together, and able to ride that day, and been like a life-changing experience for them of getting out and riding, that just blows my mind. I mean, this person, and it's not just one, there's two that I had written, like handwritten, nice letter, like, hey, just want to let you know I'm really enjoying this bike, and so forth and so on. And you got this, it's like, I'm doing the right thing. So those stores that you really enjoy working with, you have relationships with, drop them a line, do a Google review. If they do something really outstanding, like, hey, this shop is great. Google review is probably the better, or Yelp review, whatever, is probably a better influential for the market, because nobody else is really going to see this card, because I just mentioned it now, and that's the only way you're going to see it. But for those other shops, to help them, get that customer satisfaction when somebody's just new and going, hey, I'm looking for a bike shop. Oh, look at these reviews. They really love doing the service and so forth. And I got a few of those too, which is great. Thank you for those people who have done that. But these handwritten ones just kind of blew my mind. And now I get periodically a text, because my phone is basically, my business line, and I get a text like, hey, your tune-up was this morning. Your tune-up is great. It was awesome. I did Loveland Pass and had a great ride. I think he was doing the triple bypass or something like that. And it's like I did tune it. I did a fine tune on his bike. It had Dura-Ace, and I had to do some changes, a new chain and that kind of thing. And and he's an avid rider, and he did this event, and he had a great experience. Such a good experience, and the machine did so well for him. He took a picture of himself on Loveland Pass and texted me with the picture and go, hey, the bike did great. Thank you so much. And it's like, oh, I feel so good. It's like, okay, I'm doing it right. I mean, I'm having challenges, but I'm going the right path. So for me, that's really a boost. It helped me keep going. And those shops that you work with, if it's a kayak shop, or go get massages somewhere, or whoever's making your day, drop them a line, give them a little thumbs up, and like, hey, you're actually doing it good. I mean, that's where that keeps those harder days or harder times that we're all in the retail world a little bit more less painful. And you see those things like, oh, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm doing it right. I need to do more of this, or whatever the outreach needs to be, because that makes them, it's kind of like a reality check to a retail owner or employee, like, oh, I actually was doing this good. You get a positive feedback, and you got named out for it. That's really cool. It's like one of those things where you know, it's positive goes 100 miles and negative just, you know, it falls short and just makes everybody mad. So whatever. Anywho, we're coming up on the top of the hour-ish, and I'm kind of ran out of things to say. No, just kidding. There's too much to talk about. But anywho, I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I hope you're enjoying other videos that I have up, as one is called "What Will It Cost You?" It's kind of like a rundown if you took a bike that you bought used to a bike shop. And also the Diamond in the Rough is another series that seems to be picking up some steam, so I'm still going to do more of those. I will do 2 more tech videos of how to work on certain things that just, you know, that just need to be out there for people to understand how this older stuff that I work on, how it works, because they didn't make videos of them, or they need like cross-reference of another video, and, you know, see a guy like me that's been working on them, like, oh, this is what you do. And hey, I'm not perfect. There's a couple things I kind of overlooked, you know. So, you know, take it for a grain of salt. It's like, you know, it's one of those things. And sometimes I have to look up things like, I haven't touched one of these in like 15 years. I'm gonna go look this up. How's this thing work, you know? But anywho, yeah, more content's on the way, coming out. And hope you guys are all enjoying this. Hey, it's Sunday. If it's nice in your neck of the woods, get out there and go for a ride. Or if it's too hot already, which it's already, I don't know, 90 degrees here, no, 80. Go to your shop, get yourself inspired. For me, I got, what did I got new? Oh, my daughter. I have to say this little story. I had to go pick up a chain for a repair. I didn't have one in stock, so I had to go to the bike store. And I was, you know, my daughter, every time I tell her, like, you want to go to the bike store? She's like, no. But this time it was like oddly off. She's like, oh, yeah. I want to go to the bike store, but she had something in her mind that she wanted to get. Of course, 7-year-old. It's all about monetary, I want something. And she wanted new bike gloves. I'm like, all right, let's go get you some new bike gloves while I go get this chain. And yeah, so we go to the bike shop, and she looks at all the bike bells, and she likes the fun ones that have donuts and, you know, things like that. So she doesn't decide to get that, but she found a pair of gloves, and she was kind of like, she kind of settled, you know. But the funny thing is, she wore those gloves like the next 3 days and not touched her bike, but she's been wearing the gloves the next 3 days. So, you know, whatever that gets you inspired. And for my 7-year-old, it was a pair of gloves, which I'm going to try to drag her out today to go for a ride. So if you're neck of the woods, get a chance, go out for a bike ride. Get out of your head for a few minutes, you know. It does really kind of open up clarity, and that's where I have my best ideas doing stuff, and also my worst ideas. But anyway, it's an idea, you know. So hope you all have a great weekend. Until next time, from the garage, have a great day.